You're listening to Remotely We Are One, a podcast to help inspire others to take their lives back from the office commute. I'm Rick, a passionate beer rep who loves the industry but hates the commute.
And I'm Kaleem, a remote work advocate and consultant. We're going to speak with some of the top professionals who have managed to avoid the commute as they share stories from the most inspiring to the most comical, all while working remotely.
Man, this sounds exciting. Let's clock in.
Yeah, interesting fact. I used to be a medical illustrator.
Okay.
What do you mean?
So I have a graduate degree in medical illustration. I went to Medical College of Georgia. There are only a handful of programs that do this in the U.S. and took classes with medical students like medical gross anatomy. One thing you could say is I've disassembled a human body, a whole human body, all the way down to bone. That's what you do in gross anatomy. This formaldehyde smell, you'll never get it out of your head, ever.
Ugh.
It kind of makes
I
you...
thought dissecting frogs in the 8th grade was bad.
This shit is intense, man. I just have a question. How many testicles did you have to draw?
One pair.
Okay.
I mean, you knew that question somebody out there was bound to have. Hello. Welcome back, everybody, to Remotely We Are One. I am Rick, your humble host, joined as always by my esteemed colleague, Kaleem Clarkson.
I want to be the humbler host. That's a word.
Welcome
right?
back to Humbler and Humbler. I am Lloyd Christmas.
How you doing, man? How you doing? What's new?
Oh, man, I've been so busy this week. It's just been crazy, one thing after another, but it's always good to chill out for an hour and talk to some great people. So we've got a good episode today, do we not?
Yes, we do, sir. Yes, we do. And I'm shocked right now because I'm still trying to understand what our guest did before he got into what he's going to talk about today. Sure. He has his master's degree. Listen to this, everybody. I didn't even know that this shit happened. Okay. He has his master's degree in medical illustration. He worked at WebMD during the .com boom days for all you young bucks who don't know what that is. Yeah. And then this is the part. Like, I've known our guest a long time. He's not a small person. And it wasn't until today, and what I mean by small is he's tall and he's decent. He's jacked. He's got muscles everywhere. And
You're too overpraised.
But he said this today, and he says, you know, we're asking him, well, what's an interesting fact? He's like, well, I've disassembled a whole human body down to the bone, Rick.
Ooh,
it's crazy. Anyway,
I got pictures in my mind.
Raw. So anyway, I'm spending too much time on that first one because I'm still shocked. Medical illustration, it's a field. It's a field, son. But he is the former partner, exited at Mediacurrent, and Mediacurrent is a multi-million-dollar open source digital agency. And they've had clients ranging from the NFL, the NBA, Georgia.gov, Mass.gov, Auto Trader, and at one point, the busiest website in the world, the Weather Channel. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Now, weather on the 8s.
He's now enjoying his life as an exited founder. Congratulations, sir. And he is now spreading his knowledge for everybody as a digital consultant. Everyone, please welcome Mr. Paul Chason.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show, Paul.
Here.
AKA Dexter.
I knew that would come out eventually.
We couldn't help it. Such a great, interesting story about carving up bodies and drawing Barty pots. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea how to capitalize on that. I mean, it's like I had all these questions for you, Paul, and now I got all these illustrations in my mind about skeletons and blood vessels and stuff like that.
I got so many stories about that part of my career. Can go on for days.
We'll do a different podcast called "Throw Up in Your Mouth," and then we'll have you.
That's a great name.
And we'll have you on, Rick.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'd be hitting rewind actually, but tell us a little bit about what your experience has been, especially in regard to your initial experience with remote work.
Yeah, that is a really good question. I like to talk about it and tell people about it because it really kind of happened accidentally. In 2007, I partnered with a friend of mine, Dave Carey, to take this web design business that I had been working on for 3 years and expanding it, and decided to embark on this open source technology niche called Drupal. And back in the mid 2000s, Drupal was underground. Open source was still this underground thing that companies were experimenting with, but it was still very kind of innovative, leading edge. And there just weren't a lot of people doing it. So here we are in north of Atlanta, suburb called Alpharetta, 2007. We're about to blow this company up that we have this vision for this open source digital consultancy that's solely focused on Drupal. And there weren't really any Drupal developers in the Atlanta area. That was the one problem. And at the time, I had worked with Drupal on a couple of small websites, but we thought this thing was going to be big. So we, out of necessity, had to start hiring remotely. And our first kind of remote employee was someone who lived about an hour, 2 hours outside of Atlanta and just couldn't move close to report to the office. So
Wow.
we decided to start that person out, if I remember right, on a temp to perm contract. Things worked well, and he stayed on with us for a while as a remote employee. I had used Skype and AOL Messenger in some previous freelance gigs up to that point in time. So I knew that there was like a degree of probability that we could be successful with leading and managing remote team members, right. But we hadn't really like put it to the full test and had a large group of people who were distributed not only geographically around our neck of the woods, which is in the southeast, but across 4 time zones. So it was really kind of experimental. And after that first employee, we kind of learned small lessons here and there. And over the course of the next 13 years, we grew the team to 90 people across 4 different time zones.
Unbelievable.
So a lot of lessons learned along the way. And one of the valuable things that occurred that we didn't understand the value of at the time was setting up a remote infrastructure allowed us to hire the best talent in the industry. And that really was a boon to our growth over 2010 up to 2015.
Paul, I got a question for you in regards to something that you said about necessity. You're not the first person to come on the show and talk about how they started remote work out of almost a desperation, didn't have a choice. Do you feel some similarities to organizations today in 2021? Like, do you feel like organizations are kind of being forced that way? Like, I just feel like it's almost like deja vu. We've heard multiple people talk about those years of, the financial crisis and trying to pivot and just having no choice. Do you see any similarities of that time, or what do you think about that?
Yeah,
because the market made you do it, basically, is what you're saying. The market forced you to go.
Yeah, and at the time, our experience, we were in this little microcosm of a market that was the Drupal web development market, and there just isn't a lot of Drupal talent out there. What's going on now, post-pandemic, is somewhat similar, but in some ways vastly different, because there are organizations that are positioned to have folks that report to an office. However, because of the pandemic and because of what's happening competitively in the marketplace with their competitors and benefits that are being offered, it's almost like if you're not offering remote as a benefit now, you're lessening your competitive edge in terms of hiring.
Did you hear that, everybody?
Yeah.
Did you hear that from the man himself? He literally just said they did remote work out of, they had, it's different, but if you don't do it, you're at a disadvantage.
You were looking at this long before COVID had even been thought of, and you've been doing this for a while. So you were obviously somebody that was hiring remote employees long before what we're facing today. So given that, what were some of the characteristics, aside from skill, that some of your best remote employers or employees had that you really were looking for?
Yeah, great question. And I would say the number one skill, and this is going to sound cliche, and of course, but the ability to communicate in a timely manner. And
timely manner.
and great written communicators, obviously, Slack, Microsoft Teams, Skype, whatever messaging tool your organization uses, the communication content that's and the timing of content that's so important. Folks who are hired and tend to kind of drift off into the shadows, and you might not hear from them for several days. They just don't check in, or they're reluctant to check in, or you might ask them a very detailed question and they respond with something very simple and scant in terms of wording. Those people don't tend to work out well in a remote work environment. They tend to kind of just hang on, versus those who proactively communicate and understand the value of communication in terms of teamwork. They tend to excel in a remote work environment.
Interesting.
That is super interesting. You added timely on there. Everyone's talking about asynchronous communication today. That's the big topic. Responding when you can, so that you can integrate work and life together. Can you talk about like your experience on the timeliness piece, or at least timely expectations?
Yeah, it's a lot of it's really common sense. If you're part of a team and you're working toward a common goal, there's a deadline in place that you all know you're working against, and you know that one of your team members needs a deliverable or something, or status update that you're working on, or it's your responsibility. Don't wait till the last minute to let them know, hey, your status is, I'm not quite done yet, or hey, this has been done for a few days. That's just going to put them in a position of kind of skepticism and, maybe a little bit of mistrust, like, do I really know what's going on, over there at that person's house or that person's office? I'm over here managing my part of the work, and I just need to know that we're all on the same page. It's very easy in a remote work environment to do what I call gaming the system, where that you have, when it all boils down to trust, like I said. And when everyone is distributed remotely, you can't really see what each other is working on. So you kind of have to replace that with that timely communication, or just simple updates, reminding folks that, hey, you're available if they have any questions. And if you're not going to be available, maybe you've got a doctor's appointment that day, or you have to go pick up your kids from school, and you're in the middle of a team conversation over Slack, just giving the team a simple update. Hey, just giving you all a heads up, I'm headed out to my appointment. I should be back by this time. I just want to let you know I won't be able to respond, but I'll follow up when I get back. Just those simple little snippets of communication go so far in making a remote team cohesive and successful and productive.
It's like a controlled honor system.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you talked about these little snippets kind of building up trust. I think you're seeing a lot of talk about trust right now, of course, and it's I just love talking to you right now because you're seeing a lot of things that I've heard you talk about before. So it's kind of
Yeah.
cool to see those things come to fruition today. But yeah, that piece of trust, and I guess I never really thought of it because, I'm a big supporter of asynchronous communication. I think that being able to respond when you can get to it and setting those expectations, but like what you're kind of talking about to me is like, hey, you're setting expectations with people with these snippets, and the more you do those and the more they understand your position and where you are, you're building trust, and that basically kind of allows the team to move forward. It's a really I never really thought about those little pieces of communication as building up trust. It's pretty cool.
Well, they add up for sure.
They sure
Yeah,
do.
and it's important to putting your status on do not disturb if you've got something that you really need focus time to work on. Letting your team know that, hey, I've got some stuff I need to do over the next few hours. I'm going to be in do not disturb. I mean, that's a great another just device, another way to build up trust. And it's respectful to them that you're letting them know. You could go on the whole other side of the spectrum. And I had to remind people about this from time to time is someone who's too responsive and all they're doing is floating over
Yes.
their Slack, they're floating over their Slack or their Microsoft Teams all day long, and they're just like, waiting
Messaging all day.
to commit to see what message comes in so they can respond back immediately, and they're getting no work done. That's just unproductive. It doesn't make sense. Everyone at a company has work to do where they need focus time, and they also have communication work to do with need communication time. And there's a healthy balance that's going to naturally bubble up to the top when you're respectful and communicative with your team members. You want to treat your team members like you want to be treated. It all boils down to kind of like the golden rule when you're in a remote work environment. You can't forget about that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You also, I think, too, you said something, and I just know this. And shout out to Drupal too. We got to give a shout out to Drupal open source. That's where I met Paul, and I'm so thankful to all the people that I've met in that community, and really where I learned a lot of this remote work expertise. Thank you all. So thank you, Paul.
Yeah, it's an awesome community, great technology, just a very special, unique community and group.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So a lot of businesses out there, a lot of small businesses are struggling with this. You may be a technical startup and you're already thinking going remote, but not thinking about all the people type things that you need to do ahead of time. And there's a lot of small businesses out there that are now pretty much competing globally for talent in a weird way. In a small town where we're from in Bangor, if you had an insurance company that was a small insurance company and everyone could be remote, you were basically hiring talent in the Bangor area and you had no competition really, or maybe a little bit of competition in that little area. Well, now those employees are being poached from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Those
Yeah.
knowledge workers that can actually work remotely are being poached. With that said, small businesses probably need to really consider, like you said, to stay competitive. But I think Mediacurrent in the beginning, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think what was a little bit different about your remote work is you had kind of in the beginning a regional requirement, right? Is that correct? Am I remembering that correctly? Because a lot of people believe remote work means that I have to allow my employees to live all over the world or all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
And you're a business, you can do what you want. Is that correct? Can we talk a little bit about like that model? Because I think a lot of small businesses believe that, oh, well, we have to allow people to work, all over the whole country. And can you talk about why you might have kind of gone that route a little bit?
Yeah, we did restrict our hiring intentionally to the continental US.
Okay.
And our thinking around that was we wanted our clients who were primarily based in the continental US to be fairly accessible to our team members throughout the course of the projects that we were working on for our clients. So we really didn't hire outside of the four time zones in the US. That's not to say that this remote model couldn't be put in place that would be as effective as what we were doing, but at the time it was just something that we didn't really look at. However, I've talked to several founders, owners who are globally hiring that have had great success with that model. And I think you could do either or. It really boils down to what kind of business do you want to be?
Hmm.
How do you want to service your customers? How do you want your business model to work in relationship to your customers and, your fellow team members?
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges that leaders are having who maybe were not remote? We're going to talk about leaders who were not remote prior to COVID.
Yeah.
In your experience and what you're hearing in your colleagues in the city, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges leaders are having right now
Yeah.
with this workplace flexibility
Yeah.
model?
The elephant in the room naturally when a remote model is implemented is accountability. And it's a thought that, oh man, do I really know what they're working on right now? And, I gave this task to them, or I know their manager gave this task to them a couple of weeks ago. I don't know where it stands. I never see this person online that much. What's going on? And in order to make a remote model successful, you have to set clear expectations. If you are the owner, the founder, the CEO, you have to be the one to set very clear and simple expectations so that folks have a framework. I mean, folks that haven't worked remotely for the first time, they might feel like a fish out of water. Hey, I've got a little bit too much freedom. I'm here at home and doorbell keeps on ringing for somebody selling raffle tickets from school, and I keep on answering it. Should I be allowed to do that? What happens if my boss finds out about it? And as an owner, you have to think about instances that are typically going to come up when somebody's working from home and how they should address that. And you don't have to come out of the gates having every single scenario thought through in your mind and have a decision tree or a workflow that you communicate to your team about, hey, this is how you should handle this situation, that's going to happen while you're working from home. In my opinion, it's starting off with a few 3 to 5 very simple guidelines. And notice I say guidelines and not policies, because policies are written to be broken and policies are very rigid. We're all human and
Hmm.
every person's life is unique. And every employee's role at a company, even though you might have the same title, is still you bring a unique skill set and a unique life experience to your role. So
Right.
shy away from or just like completely avoid calling remote work policies and call them guidelines. And starting off with guardrails, putting those in place. And if you're the type of manager who's just like, I don't know, I still don't know, I'm still like very leery, trusting,
Mm-hmm,
start
mm-hmm.
off with some small experiments. Start off small. Think about how you can allow folks to work maybe 2 days a week from home and see how you like it, see how your team likes it, get an understanding of what kind of challenges they are coming up against working remotely, get clarification on what you're coming up against working and managing remotely, and then take baby steps.
Hmm.
But if you're not ready to do it just yet, there's no reason for you to like completely jump off the diving board with your entire company into the remote work pool. The really hard
Yeah.
decision that I think business owners and CEOs have in front of them who haven't been doing work remotely and have to compete for talent in a remote marketplace is, how do I implement remote work quickly, yet not so fast that, I recklessly
Right.
damage the culture and the productivity of our business?
Right.
That's a really hard question, and I don't have the answer for it. But if I were in that position, I would start off with those simple baby steps.
Hmm.
And really, a lot of it depends on what business you're in and what your business model is. For IT and the technology web development industry, it was a very easy move for us because all of the work that's being done can be done on a computer. We don't have inventory that we're dealing with, and you don't have physical products, or you don't have physical customers that you have to interact with on, an hourly basis during the day. For another type of professional service or a product-based company, that question might have a completely different answer.
Interesting. So in terms of, like, say, accountability, there's a huge weight on some of these business managers' shoulders. So do you think, broadly speaking, do you think managers just have to find a way to change?
Yeah, that's great question. I do.
Yeah, because I mean, like before accountability, right? Like you were talking about, well, how do I know if, Jane or Joe are getting their job done? Well, how did you know that before? Because you could see them doing something. So that is an interesting question, right?
Yeah, so environment that we're in now, 5G is coming quick, or in some cases it's already here, and internet speeds are only getting faster. I do think that every business owner and manager are going to be faced with the question of how remote do I need to make this workplace, and how remote does our environment need to be?
Yeah. It's and then dealing with that accountability thing, like, okay, how do we run experiments to deal with those insecurities or inability to tell if your employees are getting the job done? So it seems to me that there does need to be some sort of philosophical mindset shift from managers to be able to, alleviate that doubt.
Yeah. We were fortunate in that, it was like I was saying, the profession or the service business that we were in is just kind of naturally inclined to having remote reporting tools that were available for us to track progress. So we're using Jira for ticket management. Whenever someone had an assignment to do, they were assigned a task, a ticket would be generated and it would be assigned to them. If their manager and or client didn't get notified in the time frame that was originally set to them as an expectation, then we knew that there was going to be a problem. So there were kind of natural controls that were in place. That's what I would advise businesses who are contemplating going either partially remote or fully remote. And you're just used to that office environment where, hey, I know Susie is over there in the cube 2 rows down. She and I typically work together on tasks from time to time, and I just stand up and yell over my cube, hey, Susie, how's it going? If that's the overall model, then in the business that you're in, then you have a huge change that you're having to face, and you have to put better reporting tools in place that accommodate virtual.
Did you get the memo about the TPS reports?
Yeah. And does he just go, what's the other one?
But I was told that I could have my radio at a reasonable volume. You took my red line, swing line stapler.
Okay, so for all you, we're showing our age here. For all you young bucks that don't know what we're doing, we're talking about a classic movie that everyone needs to see, especially today. This movie should be huge right now if you think about it.
Yeah,
Office Space, like, why did they not re-release this right now? What are they thinking? Yeah. That's a freebie for you, Office Space. Re-release that shit. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea.
Unbelievable.
No, I was going to say, especially because of Hollywood's unoriginality. They're on this unoriginality trend, re-releasing all these movies. Why not Office Space?
Yeah.
It seems to me that's a no-brainer.
Especially during now. They could call it remote Office Space and do a twist on it. I mean, come on, Hollywood. I'm this good.
That's right.
I'm gonna earn my keep.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, so switching gears a little bit, can you share with us a little bit, or maybe a memory or something that stuck out, that sticks out in your memory from your remote work experience, whether it's comical or inspirational? Give us the details on something that you just cannot forget.
Yeah, there are a lot of them. So One moment that I couldn't forget, but I unfortunately I wasn't on this call. I wasn't in this meeting, but I'll never forget our team and the comments that I heard after this meeting concluded. We probably had like 5 or 6 team members in a meeting with one of our biggest clients, and we had a great relationship with them. And the meeting ended, and I was in Slack and I was kind of checking in with the team, and there were all these comments, laughing and people giggling. Oh, I can't believe that. And I asked them what had happened, and the client hopped on to their meeting in a towel only, and with her hair up in a towel. She'd clearly like just gotten out of the shower, and she initiated the meeting and had been talking for about 5 minutes in the meeting. And one of our team members, this is one of those remote things where it's like it could only happen remotely, and it's a benefit of being remote. Our team member DM'd her on the side and said, yeah, I'm not sure if you realize this, but you're still dressed in like a towel, and it looks like you just got out of the shower. You might want to. And so she embarrassingly told everyone in the meeting, oh, I'm so sorry. I thought my webcam was off and it was actually on. So she concluded the meeting early. That changed. Yeah. But, we had several instances like that where you can imagine we're meeting with someone, maybe a client, they're in a small room, small house, apartment, wherever it might be. And then all of a sudden somebody comes walking out of the bathroom, you hear the toilet flushing, in the back, or toilet paper trailing behind them, stuff like that.
I don't know why the toilet paper trailing behind
I don't know.
makes me laugh so hard. It's just, I don't know. It's saying the word poop,
Yeah, I used to think that was like an urban myth. Like, there's no way that would ever happen until it happened to me. I was actually in college, and I was in a lecture hall of like 400 people. And I'm walking, because I just left the bathroom, and I walk into the lecture hall, and of course, my seat is all the way down in the front. So I had to go down the steps. And the girl sitting like 3 or 4 rows behind me, I used to see her every day. She was absolutely stunning. And I walked past her, and I hear the snickering, and she said, I never thought I would see that in real life. And I turned around, and I looked behind me, and there's this long white strip going right to my heel, going down the ramp into the lecture hall, and it was right underneath my foot. And I said, son of a bitch, it actually happens to people.
And now she's his wife.
Yeah. Now I embarrass her every day, not just once a semester.
That's great.
Yeah. One of the things that I didn't mention, this is just good tips that I've learned over the years. When you're working remotely, especially in like a group chat, you want to praise in public and critique in private.
Praise in public, critique in private. You hear that, everyone?
Sage wisdom.
Yeah. So if you have a team member who you need to say something to them, you need to have a conversation about an issue, do it over DM. Don't do it in public. And obviously, conversely, if somebody's done something great, let's celebrate it publicly. That's only going to help build up the chemistry and help the team gel. There are times when slacking or just chatting an issue, it doesn't make sense. It shouldn't be simply communicated about or conversed about over Slack. You should have a video call. And, like the rule of thumb that I use is if there's an issue that you feel like, hey, I would typically want to have a face-to-face with this person about it. I want to meet them in person, but it's impossible for you to meet in person right then and there because they're in 2 time zones away. Hop on a Zoom call, Google Hangout, and do it over video. And make sure that you both are on camera. That's another really, really important part of remote work is when that complex personal communication needs to happen. Don't shy away from using a camera. Don't shy away from using your hands. Body language still goes a long, long, long way. I mean, you can read thousands of words in a second of looking at somebody's body language. So don't ever discount the authenticity that video provides versus chat.
Wow, that is fantastic insight. That really, it's just things you don't think about normally. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Paul, thank you so much for all of your insights. This has been an absolutely wonderful time here today. Can you tell our listeners where they might find you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn at Paul Chason. Just search Paul Chason for LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter, but I don't tweet a ton. I think I've tweeted maybe once in the last 3 months at Paul Chason. And over email, you can get in touch with me at paul.chason@chasondigital.com.
Wow, he just put out his email for our listeners, yo. Do not spam him. Thank you so much, Paul. Really appreciate you stopping by, man. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Great talking to you.
Absolutely great time. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Remotely We Are One podcast. Visit us at remotely1.com/podcast for upcoming episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our episodes on your favorite podcast app.
Hey, don't forget to clock out.